Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special The Saturday Show. Before I introduce my guest, I again want to thank everybody that's watching the Saturday Show. Usually, I tape this on Zoom, but I decided because I have a guest who I'll let introduce himself here in just a moment that I would just go live with this instead of trying to transfer to Zoom and then do a later broadcast. I'm like, no, let's just make this easier for me. Please subscribe to this channel. I am up to 130 subscribers. I'm so happy, but we know what the goal is. The goal is 1,000 by December. So we've got a whole lot to get to. So remember to share this, like this. Please comment with your questions in the comment section. I forgot to put up all my links, but remember to visit, and I didn't put this on the website, but remember to put remember to watch this later on today at TRACYMediaLLC.com. That's my website. I'll remember next week to actually put it so you can watch it live on the website, but I didn't do it this today because I was working on some other projects that I have that I'll talk about at the very end. So, and remember that you can no longer support me on Patreon, but I'm asking you to go to buymeacoffee.com/TRACYMedia. Your contribution of at least $2 helps me. You can tell that I need lights. Look at this. This looks like I have on like every light, and I still look great. I'm like, ugh. So support me in that way. So I see some comments in the comment section, but I am going to first allow my guest to introduce himself.
Well, thank you for having me up here, Tracy. I appreciate you for letting me do the introduction. For those of you who are political junkies, you may have heard of me before. My name is Samuel Ronan. I ran for the DNC chair back in 2017, and now I'm running, amongst many other things that I've ran for, Congress. I've ran for Senate. I was even invited to run for governor, but that didn't quite go so well. Point is, I'm running for president now, and that is why I'm on this channel, on this interview, is to showcase how we can still agree and talk and get involved in politics, talk to our neighbors, talk to our friends and family, no matter where they are, about the values and issues that matter without having to be alienating. Because I am running as a Republican, and by the time we're done with this interview, you're going to be scratching your head like, how on earth is this guy a Republican? There's method to the madness. So without further ado, thank you for having me on here, Tracy.
Well, pretty much I'm scratching my head now. But we'll get to that. So I see we already have some comments in the comment section, so I'll go to those first. Parker, hey Parker, is he the first Republican you have interviewed? Yes. I can't remember if this is the one before. There was none before. You're confusing Samuel with not John. John is not a Republican, but you're confusing with another conservative guest, but he was libertarian. So, I'm at 132. So we're closer to 1,000.
Indeed, Parker. That's exactly. I was on the debate stage.
Oh, you skipped to my next question. You went right to it. There you go. Go ahead.
I'll go back to private chat so I'm not accidentally jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm like, wait a minute, because I'm slow with these. So, I actually know him. I think he was on the debate stage for the DNC election in 2017. So my questions are going to be different because obviously you've had experiences on both sides. Mm-hmm. You've ran, as Parker said, DNC chair in 2017. Now you're running as a Republican. But I have a feeling you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you closely associate with either of those parties.
Oh, I most certainly do not.
Okay.
And that's kind of the point.
Okay.
For the longest time, I was going to run as a Republican regardless because I was active duty Air Force, white male, veteran. It just made more sense to run as a Republican. But when I first dipped my toe into politics, I could not get a hold of any of the Republican parties. And then I ended up moving to Springboro for work, and there is no Democratic Party in Springboro. I mean, it exists, but they have zero power, authority, or say-so. And how that ended up happening was I tried reaching out to the Republican Party of Springboro, Warren County, didn't get any callbacks. I did from the Democratic Party, and so then I started running for office. Back then, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, green behind the ears, full of light and hope and expectations that, our political process was worked, the political parties were for the people, and that they would support their candidates. And the reality was they either don't or they can't. And because of the failure of the Democratic Party in Warren County to support me, or any of their candidates for that matter, is why I decided to run for the DNC chair. Because at that point, I realized, well, if the party isn't going to take care of the people at the places where they're needed most, instead of, say, like New York City or Los Angeles, where they have more power and infrastructure than anywhere else, then we need to start focusing our efforts on the common person, the people that have been forgotten and left behind. Fast forward another, I guess it's 6 years now, and much of the same has happened. I ran for Congress as a Republican. I've ran for senator as a Green Party, and I'm now running for president as Republican. And many people are like, well, why would you continue escalating instead of trying to just keep hammering into the door? Well, it's the same difference, same problem. My support and recognition is at a more national level, not at a local level or at the state level. And so running for president, people are like, oh, how can I support you if you're running for Congress in Ohio? So, well, now I'm running for president. Now you can support me however you'd like. The other reason is because the Democrats are not holding a primary. They're literally not. The Republicans are. And the Republicans have this interesting behavior where they might not like the person who got elected, but they will support them in full. And that's my methodology is if I can break into that 3% threshold, that 1% to 3% polling threshold in the Republican Party, I am very certain that this message of populism and general support of, people first, our country first, and then corporations pay the bill, I think that'll resonate with quite a few people.
Okay, so we're about to take a whole series of steps backwards in terms of my question. Because usually I ask a candidate, because everybody who watches my show, especially the Saturday show, and let me take a step back. Usually on the Saturday show, I start off with something very serious, and then I go to something very silly. We're not going to do silly today because I didn't tell Samuel what I thought about talking about. And I'm like, he's not going to want to talk about that. So we're just going to stay on politics for this episode. But don't look for that next week. Next week, we're back to the same serious, silly format. Warning. Okay, so, I forgot my question. So, you're running, and this I'm still trying to wrap my head around this progressive Republican thing. So just give me time. I'll eventually get there. So you're running in the Republican Party.
Yes.
We know who has the lead right now.
We sure do.
I don't want to talk about him because basically it makes me want to throw up. But
it's free advertisement for somebody who shouldn't be anywhere near power.
Exactly. And then you have the person in second, now third place, who decided, I'm just going to use my state legislator to wipe out Black history like slavery. It just didn't happen. It was good. Don't you see? They learned all these things. Talk about, because we have to talk about them. Talk about what you think they get right, and then talk about what you think, I don't believe I agree with that.
That would be a harder thing for me to think of than you for asking me a question about being a progressive Republican. I don't believe there's anything that Trump...
And I'm talking about the whole field, from Vivek Ramaswamy all the way down to Tim Scott, any of them. I just picked the top two because they're the top two.
I do not think any of them have anything going for them for the simple fact that their interests are greed. Their interests are aligned with corporations. Their interests are aligned with billionaires and millionaires and the wealthy elite. Their interests on paper, out of their mouths, on their tours, have nothing to do with helping people. And anything that they do say that is based around helping people is mired in racism or discrimination or xenophobia. So one of the many reasons why I'm running for president as a Republican is, as long as there's an R next to my name, they might be like, well, aren't you a liberal saying things like that? It's like, no, I'm a Republican. See the R? That's how you know I'm a Republican. And the idea is, I believe if we can talk about true social transparency issues to people that are willing to listen, obviously not the 10% that are, MAGA crazy, you know, uh, just too far to the fringe, but it's the middle 80% of the people that we want to reach. So I don't think there's anybody galvanizing enough in the Republican Party to reach that middle 80. It's just polarization. Trump will only gain support because, I don't want to vote for Biden. And it's the same thing for DeSantis. Oh, he's not Trump, but he also can't run his own state. And then the others I haven't bothered looking into because I don't think they're worth looking into. Yeah.
And here, I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to do a show yesterday, and I know everybody's like, oh, you had a show yesterday, but I took it off because I don't know what's happened with the movie. I have just become a sleep zombie. I'm just like, okay, I gotta sleep. But I wanted to talk, and I don't know how to phrase this question. I can only say it as honestly as I can say it. I don't think 90% of the people running in the Republican Party are serious about being president. Because if they were, they would be more critical of Trump. Like, he's got so many court cases that I get confused about how many court cases he actually has. Like, I get them all confused. I'm like, okay, is this the January 6th one, or is this the Georgia one? They don't criticize him, so it's got to be two reasons why they're running: vanity project to get more money, or cabinet position. Because or vice president. I can't figure out if I'm saying this as a question or am I saying it as a statement. But am I somewhere as a Republican? Do you think I'm somewhere in the right vein, or am I just totally off on this?
No, I agree. And it's just like RFK Jr. running for president in the Democratic Party. He's just trying to make a name for himself so that when he can run, as in 2028, he might actually be a viable candidate for the party. I don't think he's a viable candidate, period, because, again, he doesn't stand on the right issues. And then you have Marianne Williamson, Orb Mother. I love Orb Mother. I think she's great. I think she's a wonderful human being. But according to the grapevine, according to her own behavior on the campaign trail, she's just trying to sell a book. I mean, so really and truly, the only people who are serious about running for president right now appear to be Biden and Trump, but neither of them are capable of holding the office, and both of them have. And so, yes, the majority of people who are running for president right now are doing it as a vanity project for some future other. Whether it is VP, whether it's a cabinet position, whether it's a re-election campaign, selling a book, what have you. Many could say, well, you're not being serious. I mean, you don't even have money. You don't have much of a website. It's like, okay, but I'm also not a millionaire. I'm also not a billionaire. I'm also not a previously elected governor who can just manipulate his state media functions. I am a regular person running for office the way the Constitution was written and the way our nation's politics was intended, was for some farmer or some person who works for a living in the mines, in the fields, making stuff, fighting wars and coming back. It was meant for the regular layman to get involved, do your time, 2, 4, 6, 8 years, and then go right back to work or to your homestead or whatever it was. And that is what I'm trying to bring. Of course, I would like to have much more money, but even if I did, even if I won the lottery, the whole point of messaging is, hey, we are people in this country dealing with a dystopian nightmare because corporations are running everything, because we are being divided and conquered by the people in power with all this us versus them stuff, taking sides here or there, and all the other nonsense. So, and in terms of seriousness, you might be able to lump me in with that 90% that I can't run a serious campaign, but I at least am serious about running the country for the sake of the people, should I be fortunate enough to get into office. And none of those chuckleheads, I would say, meet that mark.
I'm not gonna say I'm glad you agree with me, but it just is so apparent because if I were crazy enough to think I'm going to run for president as a Democrat, I would never do that. Look, listen to me. If I'm running for office, I'm not running as a Democrat. Period. It won't happen. But if I were going to do it, I'm criticizing Joe Biden.
Oh yeah.
Period. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm like, okay, you're not going to debate because we'll get into the debate. Trump not wanting to debate here in a moment, but uh, I feel like if you're going to run in a party, I feel like I can say Samuel Ronan will criticize Trump. He will criticize Trump when he deserves that criticism and give concrete. I'm criticizing him on this, this, and this, and this, and this. I don't see any of the. They're all just like, oh, I'll pardon them, or oh, I'll, the media. I'm like, they can't be. I don't know why I'm on this point so badly, but they can't be serious because if you're serious about running, the thing is you have to make a distinction between yourself and the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've never ran for office, but I do know that you have to make some distinction between yourself and whomever.
Because otherwise, you're setting yourself up to be somebody else's lackey. And if you're the president and you're the lackey of Trump, doesn't that essentially effectively give Trump more power by
right? And the
subverting
only
the
one that's kind of criticized him is Chris Christie, who that man disgusts me. I don't want to see. I said I wasn't gonna get silly, but now I'm about to get silly. I just broke my promise. I'm sorry, but that guy makes me so. He irritates me to the uttermost. Because I'm like, you were not the greatest governor of New Jersey. Let's not forget that you literally shut down a beach so that you and your family could use it and then didn't let anybody else. Let's not forget that, please.
Yeah,
the
abuses of power are just
I'm like,
disgusting.
Do they think we forget? Like, do they just think, okay, well, that's it. We don't know.
Well, the problem is amongst the majority of Americans, they do forget. If you're not paying attention to all these different things and all these different individuals, you do forget because we are constantly bombarded with nonsense in the media. I mean, I'm not saying the war in Ukraine is nonsense, but why are we worried about this? This isn't our problem. And why are we trying to turn it into a proxy war so it can escalate into World War III? Then the government admitted that aliens are real. And America just basically said, well, that's fantastic. I still got bills to pay and rent.
Yeah, so that was
it's ridiculous.
It is. I'm glad we agree on that. So now here comes this serious part because I have to ask about these social issues. The Republican, because you're running as a Republican. So I had to do something that I never thought I would do. I went to the RNC webpage. Ooh, okay. I'm going to get all of that. I went to your webpage too. Like yours a whole lot better than theirs. But I had to go just to see, where they stand. I don't know why I wasted my time doing it. But there's a couple of things that I definitely had to ask you about. But first, we got a whole bunch of people in the comment section that have dropped in. So, okay, so is that macaroon granola? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Call me Mac. Mac, welcome. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here. I think this is your first time here. Just another reason to vote Green Party. We're going to address that here in a couple moments. Oh, my sister is in. Hello, sis. And the real reason for sure that Hillary lost the election was the horrible movie title, The Martian, that came right out before the election. And Parker had one up here. Didn't Pete Buttigieg, not my favorite, also run for the DNC chair in 2017? I remember I was rooting for Keith Ellison at the end, but Tom Perez ended up winning. Is that right?
That is true. And then Pete ended up becoming Secretary of Transportation because he backed the winning horse, Tom Perez. Which is another thing, right? In politics.
No, he became transportation secretary after Obama convinced him to. See, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to keep. I'm trying not to be petty, everybody. But he had no business getting that job. I'll say
No,
it
of
that
course
way.
not. But that's the thing. When what I did not realize when I ran, because I was like what, 25 or 26 years old, I was fairly young and naive, specifically in the world of politics, is when you run for office, you have to be ruthless. And one of the things I should have thought about was backing the winning horse, not the horse that I wanted to win, because I should have seen the writing on the wall. And who knows, I could have been a Democrat rising star after that. It's one of those things, right? What are you willing to compromise in politics? And my answer has apparently been for the past 6 or 7 years, nothing. I'm not willing to compromise my morals. I'm not willing to compromise my ethics. And for better or for worse, I'm here right now. So, and I think with that track record and that history, yeah, people will see like, oh, okay, he jumped around the parties, but he stuck to this message. He stuck to these guns. And when he was wrong, he fixed it. When society evolved, he evolved with them. And when society tried to backtrack, he stood his ground. And that's kind of the legacy I'm trying to leave behind in politics and the kind of political campaign I'm trying to run. So, not to get back off track, you were going to ask me how do my policies compare with the RNC, and then it's pretty much black and white or
And
black versus
that's what
white.
I'm going to, because I do this with every candidate. I will pick some issues and then we just go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one I had to pick, my core issue, my number one issue, without a doubt, Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm. Easy. I mean, the RNC does not want any part of that because there's way too much money in dragging out illness, injury, and other medical conditions rather than dealing with it right away with actual cures or actual, resolution. It's too easy to keep people in debt, and it's too lucrative to force them to pay off that debt, even when it's the number one cause of bankruptcy in America. The worst part is that the cost of healthcare in this country is based off of a multiplier. So every hospital, every doctor gets Medicare. Medicare covers the base cost of care. And what I mean by base cost, I mean every hospital, every provider sends to Medicare, the federal government, this is what it costs me to do a broken arm, cancer, what have you. And Medicare is like, all right, cool, here's your check. And then the hospital turns right around and charges a multiplier on that base cost. And in the case of Ohio, that's usually a factor of 3. So if it genuinely costs $500 to fix a broken arm, they will charge you $1,500. And in California, there are places where it's times 11. So that same $500 broken arm is going to be $5,500. And so Medicare for all, universal healthcare, however you want to phrase it. I mean, it's not only better for this country, it's already there. It literally already exists. That infrastructure is literally in place. All you need to do is have the government step in. Oh no, the government stepping in. All you would have to do is have the authority to say, no, you cannot charge multipliers. No, you cannot extort patients for more money. And no, you cannot give them drugs and pharmaceuticals that will lead to heroin addiction and opioid addiction. You do those few things, and the cost of care in America drops by a third or a fourth on average. I believe in 2022 or something, it was like $5 trillion was the cost of medical care in America. And the Medicare budget was, I think, 1.4 trillion. And the 1.4 trillion is the actual cost of care, and literally everything else was administration, advertisement, or pure profit. So you're talking about getting rid of around $4 trillion of profit for industry leaders. That's why it's not happening.
So, okay, that one just shocked me because I thought for sure you were going to say no. I thought for sure you were going to say the insurance. Okay, you said black and white. You definitely said black and white. So I see we have somebody else new here that I've never seen. And Anna E. I think we should all vote for Sam in the GOP primaries. If all progressive Dems, moderate Republicans, and left-leaning independents vote for Sam in the primaries, he could win.
Well, thank you,
Okay, then
Anna.
Parker says, I think the fact that Pete Buttigieg backed Tom Perez over Ellison did help him in being able to get a head start in 2020 presidential run, but endorsing Biden got him the transportation. Yeah, that's what got it. It was him, Barack Obama telling him, "Hey, drop out the race. We'll give you an office." But that I can't prove that. Okay, so back on the Medicare for All issue. Oh, and remember, I know people are watching this. Like this page. I get very, 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 very few likes. Please like this page and share it. Share it on all your social medias. Share it to your friends, your cousins, your enemies. Just share it, please. Thank you. So, the thing about, I always ask about Medicare for All when I'm explaining to people. I always explain it as, because private insurance is never going to ultimately disappear. It's going to remain. Even if we
Depends who's
do.
in power.
Yeah,
It
but
only exists because of Nixon allowing it to exist in the first place. We had universal health care in this country up until, I forget the act, but it was Nixon's act. I think it was like the Healthcare Affordability Act or something, like 1956. It was something act
okay.
of 1956, and because of that, private insurance became a thing. All you need to do is repeal that. Done.
Okay, so let me rephrase it in this way. Do you believe that it's a good idea for the insurance companies to basically go away?
Yes.
Okay,
Unequivocally, yes. I could go
okay.
into more detail, but the
No,
bottom line is
that's probably
yes.
the question I should have asked, because people think Medicare for All is this big thing, and I no, that's definitely on me. Oh, and we have a question. Okay, so Mac. I'm going to get to your question here in a moment, but I've got to ask about the next issue. Now that you've answered that way on Medicare for All, I'm pretty sure I know your answer on this: immigration.
So with immigration, it's kind of funny because my family, my mother, for instance, is a American citizen now. She went through the process, swore, and got her citizenship. My citizenship is, of course, to be eligible for running for president is you have to be natural born, and I am. But there's a few technicalities there, but I was also born in Germany, and now I'm here. So for me, looking at immigration, I have seen, how the process does work, and it is egregious. I mean, it's long, it costs money, and if you don't have $3,000 to spend, you're not going to become an American, right? And then you see the border crisis. We America, our policies, our foreign policy in Latin and South America has done nothing but devastate those economies, those cultures, those communities, and now they are fleeing, literally fleeing devastated nations, devastated economies. Of course, the same is happening in Syria. The same has been happening in Africa and all sorts of countries all over the world. And where are they flocking to? America? Why? Because we did it. We burned their house down, so they're coming home to our house and saying, "Hey, I need a couch, buddy. You blew up my house. I need a couch." And we're giving them the middle finger. And then we make promises. Okay, you know what? You're right. We should give you at least a couch. If you enlist in our military, we'll give you citizenship for 4 years. Even if you deploy, guaranteed, right? The whole 9 yards. You'll get every benefit that you can imagine, including citizenship. And then what do? We turn around and renege on that. And then we start spouting more xenophobic nonsense that they're bringing over rapists and murderers and criminals and sending them over to America. Except the only time in history that was actually true was during the Louisiana Purchase, when the French literally emptied their jail cells and literally dumped them into the South. So if anything, the legacy of criminality and that kind of behavior is literally in Louisiana, Mississippi, and that part of the country.
So
To that point, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry. No, no.
There's a lot of build up to this point. We've gone through, well, I guess that might be drawing too many allusions. Point being, the whole immigration crisis, we're going to call it that, just to be spicy. The immigration crisis is a lack of morality on the behalf of the United States. We do things and we don't want to accept responsibility for doing those things. And then we privatize concentration camps at our border. Oh, I'm sorry, tent cities. To detain, oh, I'm sorry, to support the immigration influx. And then we separate children from their families, lock them in cages, and get them lost from the foster care system. I mean, I'm sorry, we make sure that they get proper treatment. The thing is, what we're doing is actually worse than what Nazis did to the Jews, because at least what the Nazis were doing, they weren't trying to hide squat. They were doing the thing. We are not only doing the thing, we are profiting off of it. Then we're lying about it. And then we're trying to say it's a good thing on top of that. Our immigration policy is worse than Nazi Germany.
And you must have watched me last week, because I kept arguing that no, we still, right now, under the Biden administration, my argument was, yes, there are children that are still separated from their parents.
The second he got elected, that stopped being broadcast.
And exactly, and I didn't even realize this, is that there were children under the Obama administration that were didn't know it. Nobody said anything.
And I'm like, Clinton, I believe.
Exactly, and we didn't know this. And for me, when I criticize, because here's what I do. I just say to the Republican Party, y'all just a bunch of racists. I don't got time for y'all. I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not gonna do anything, because I just kind of they're the throwaway party for me. No offense, but they're the throwaway party for me. But when I argue with Democrats on things that I know that are true, like, yes, there are children that are still locked up in cages, I'm told I'm a Russia bot, which Vladimir Putin is not giving me a dime. Hey, if you're going to give me money, pay my mortgage. Do that for me, and I'll be, hey, whatever. But it's like, oh, well, you're not seeing the big picture. No, I am seeing the big picture. The big picture is children are still in cages. Children are still being put in the foster care system and being adopted by families that are of a different racial background of that child. And there's no solution. But I think what you're saying, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, stop me. We created this mess.
We did. I specifically said that. It is all our own.
It's like we're blaming these people coming over, but why are they coming over? We messed their countries up. Why don't we make their countries better? We pay restitution for what we did to those countries, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think this is what he's saying.
I mean, restitution isn't even the argument that even needs to be made. It's the humanitarian crisis that is what needs to be addressed.
And that too. But I'm just saying, if you strengthen those countries, well, one, you stay out of their political elections. That's the first thing you do. And then you go about that.
True. And I mean, interventionism has usually been an excuse to test new weapon systems instead of actually, I don't know. We have the Army Civil Engineering Corps, so why on earth aren't we sending that all over the country, all over the world? I mean, there's so many countries that could benefit from the Civil Engineering Corps, and we're just not doing that. And then, like you were saying, if you say these things to Democrats, you're a Russian bot. If you say those to Republicans, you're just going to get angry and call them racist. Well, that's the point of me running as a Republican, is that if we want to be a country, then we need to find a way to bridge that gap. Not every Republican is racist, and not every conservative-leaning person is racist. What they are is, it's cultural. It's just like, why are you Christian instead of Muslim? Why are Muslims Muslim instead of Hindu, right? It's because of where they grew up, and that's the problem. We have gotten so far divided, so far past the whole actual discussion point, that it has now just become so ingrained, I mean, over the course of years, of course, decades, that it's no longer about Republicans versus Democrats. It's, I was here, this is how I was raised, this is how everybody I know thinks and feels, and I want to be a part of that community, and therefore this is what I'm going to vote for. Now we are finally getting back to the discussion of politics, of political issues, of social issues, of how, okay, I might be in deep South Louisiana, born and bred, 5th generation, but I see the world around me, and this isn't okay. We should start doing these things differently. And now you do start seeing younger generations, Gen Z and millennials, getting elected as mayors, city councilmen, even state representatives, a few Congress people, and they're able to start pushing left instead of trying to be slightly to the left of, fascism. And to the point, I know you're going to get through these questions again, but Parker made the point that says, I think that goes too far. I know the point you were trying to make, but there are definitely some worse things that the Nazis did. And you're not wrong. I'm not saying that America overall is worse than Nazi Germany. What I am saying is the Nazis didn't turn it into a private corporation, publicly announce it in their media, and have the entire American people just gloss it over, whereas that is exactly what America is doing. So in there are definite points to where we are worse in that regard.
Yeah.
The
So,
point being
yeah.
is that it's socially reprehensible. There's that human loss, that human casualty, that lack of morality and ethics.
And I told Mac that I was going to get to his question. Does Rowan agree that eventually, when the Colorado River runs dry, should the federal government pump in ocean water to fill the Grand Canyon up to the brim and let it all just evaporate to help farmers and possibly use the basin to grow transplanted corals? I hope I'm pronouncing that word right. And I didn't even know that was a possibility, but yes, I will let you answer it.
So that's an interesting idea. There are better ways to go about dealing with the freshwater crisis in America without trying to flood the West with ocean water. For one, it's saline water, so it's salty, which means it will only ruin whatever farmland it gets to, which is why beaches are sand and not very lush, green, arable land. That being said, there are many technologies available to us to where we could halt or stop this crisis. And there are many policy positions we could take, such as, I don't know, not letting Nestle pump, gallons upon gallons of water for $1 to resell in, friggin' water bottles. I might have actually been drinking a Dasani water bottle. That's not great, but that's the society we live in. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism, and therefore there's also no ethical production under capitalism, which means there's no ethics in capitalism, which means we need to start instilling those ethics into capitalism. For instance, with hydrogen power, you can take the water out of, just the regular flowing water, turn that into a fuel source, and then when it gets utilized, it turns back into water. That would be a self-producing or a self-replicating power supply. There's other ways to get energy and electricity other than using oil and fracking, i.e. wind turbines, solar panels. We could actually use, on the coasts, we could do, I forget what they're called now, water turbines. I think they're called something else like wave generators. And that could power every single coastal city just by utilizing the currents of the ocean. There are so many different ways to deal with these crises, and it just starts with holding corporations accountable. And you're right, that's not going to happen with any of the parties that are running, with any of the candidates who are in the front running, because they are in bed with the corporations. They are literally getting rich off of their positions of power, and they have a vested interest in maintaining that. However, I am not, and I never will be, which means if I ever were to become president, I would get shot and or succeed. I don't have a vested interest in corporate power. I want to crush it and destroy it and dismantle it and bring it back into the hands of the people.
Yep. So, and I'm going to get to some more comments before I get to my next question. Parker states, Amy Klobuchar got screwed over, LOL. She dropped out of at the same time as I'm assuming Pete Buttigieg, but she didn't even get an appointment to Biden's cabinet. That's true. Oh, you already answered that one. I saw an article online about how the presidential candidate in Ecuador was assassinated. That's true. And yeah, that part is true about privatization. But the Grand Canyon has a huge unused capacity, and if it runs dry, then why not use it to evaporate ocean water and help migrate the global warming crisis? So I'll let you answer that question before I get to mine.
So the global warming crisis is due to the pollution of 70 or so corporations, most of which are based out of the United States, one of which is the United States military. Again, if you hold corporations accountable, you resolve many issues. The second problem with global warming is urbanization. The reason why cities are so hot and why it's so hot when you go outside is because we've been cutting down trees like it's, going out of style. If we would just start planting more trees or oxygenating plants, that would go much further in repairing the damage done rather than trying to flood the Grand Canyon with ocean water, which again would not turn that land into irrigatable land in the first place. That is a science fiction idea. It's a novel idea, but it is science fiction. There is no basis
Yes.
in environmental science where that would even make sense. Now,
Follow. Yeah.
there
Oh, sorry.
are,
Go ahead.
I will say, there are ways to turn ocean water into drinkable water, because that is what happens in the Middle East. It starts with Turkey, goes through Iraq and Iran, or whichever order it's supposed to go into, and then it makes its way through the rest of that water basin. However, that works to a degree. There has to already be a river. There already has to be something else. And it's not like we just built a giant dam somewhere and prevented ocean water from getting into the Grand Canyon. We would have to create a channel into the Grand Canyon that would be large enough to be maintained and under control so that it doesn't, I don't know, wipe out the entire West Coast. So it's not a realistic solution that is at all feasible. The way to handle global warming and environmental crisis would literally require the accountability of the greatest polluters, the greatest polluting corporations in the world, and dismantling them or forcing them to use green technologies. Then it would be reforesting. Then it would be using and improving our energy grid and our energy usage to be more sustainable and more green related. Some of those things could be done concurrently, of course. And that is actually what one of my policies is we do a concurrent overhaul of our infrastructure to rely less on petroleum and gas and natural gases, and to instead focus on solar, hydrogen, and other clean energy technologies by completely taxing those industries out of existence, federalizing them, and turning it into a net export, and then using those funds to pay for the projects that would probably amount to several $1 trillion. So I hope that answers that question.
Oh boy, I forgot. Oh, I know I'm going to save that issue for last. Okay, so I want to talk about something that the Republican Party loves to talk about: the military.
Mm-hmm.
They love to talk about how great the military is, and they love to talk about, we need to increase our military. Actually, the Democrats do this too. Every time there's a budget increase to the military, it gets no arguments. Both parties participate in this. My question to you is, because a president is the commander in chief, that's one of his or her titles. They are the leader of the military for all purposes. What would be your strategy in funding the military?
Very simple. We get rid of the military industrial complex. So the thing about the military industrial complex and the phrase getting rid of it is the fact that it's private. A weapons developer should never be a profitable entity, like an organization. It should never be a profitable enterprise. Straight up. Secondly, the military budget, it has about a $300 billion overhead for the military industrial complex. And the remaining $400 billion goes to maybe bases and maybe projects and programs and keeping those things going. It does not go to sustainable living, cost of living improvements, benefits for the enlisted or even officers. It just goes into fluff. So that would be the first thing I do, is get rid of all of that excess. If we were to have an $800 billion military budget under my presidency, you can be assured that that money would be going towards reinstating the GI Bill's flexibility to being used as a down payment for a house, to be a down payment for starting a business, or to be simply cashed out outright. Also improving the retirement system, fully funding the VA, and ensuring that homeless veterans specifically are always taken care of, no matter where they are in the world, that they will have a roof over their heads and warm clothes on their body. If we are going to send them to war and then bring them back with PTSD and other medical maladies, we are going to take care of them. So when a Republican talks about support the troops, support the military, support this, what they're talking about is support my dividends and my stock portfolio. which is why they are heinous representatives who have no business wielding power, let alone warmongering, which is why I specifically put in my policies on my website, www.samronan.com. If you go to /issues and scroll somewhere to the bottom, military reforms, it's in the first paragraph or the second paragraph, where all members of Congress who vote for war shall, not might, not may, not could, shall spend the first 7 days of combat and wartime activities on the front lines to deter that kind of behavior.
I have one, not pushback, but here comes my next issue with that. Most of the people in Congress are in their mid 70s somewhere.
That's their problem.
Okay, so you're not like, I don't care how old you are. Okay,
I don't care.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
If you're going to vote to send me to war, or my children or your children and grandchildren or whomever, if you're going to vote to go to war, you better have the fortitude, the spine to go and actually be a part of that war effort. You don't get to just sit behind a safe desk and look on a screen and be like, oh shucks, we lost 12 people in a whatever accident or whatever conflict. No, if you're going to see the cost of war, the human cost of war. And that's the problem. We don't have military veterans in office anymore. We don't have military veterans running the show. We just have corporatocracy, blah, 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 getting nepotism hires, getting nepotism positions and opportunities. And then they run for office with that big sack of cash, and then they try and ruin the people's lives more and more. I am enlisted, or I was enlisted, I should say. I served my country directly. If I had deployed, I would have been on the front lines. I would have been shot at. I would have been hurt. I could have been hurt. I might have been even in Al Udeid, Qatar, but I would have been supporting the direct effort, and I could have been targeted even outside of a war zone because I wore the camo, because I was clearly not from that community. I was very clearly military. They have never been under fire, have never been under risk. They have never had to face the consequences of their actions. They've never had to bear that responsibility. I've had to bury people in the military. So, no. My positions on the military are extremely hardline. I will not bend on them. But the good news is that it is hardline against those who would abuse their power, their authority, and send people off to frivolous war for their own personal profit or gain.
I thought that's what you were gonna say, but I was like, "What? They're in there some because there's a couple of them like in their 80s, and
then Grandpa can go die on the front lines.
Okay,
you can quote me on that.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding where you were going, so that, like I said, just want to make it clear. We got some comments, and I'm going to get to my next issue here in just a moment. Hello, Marlins. They love the military as long as they think they are woke. Oh gosh, I don't even want to talk about woke. I promise I will not ask you about the woke culture. I will not. They love the military as long as they don't think they are woke. Then Parker asked an interesting question. What do you think are ways to co-opt the twist conservative rhetoric in a way that actually is supporting more progressive type of policies? How challenging would that be?
The answer to that question is quite simple. You don't have to twist their talking points. All you have to do is present yours, because for the most part, they're in an echo chamber, just like Democrats are in their own echo chamber, just like every fractional faction of the left is in their own little echo chambers. If you are not presented outside information, you cannot draw other conclusions. So what I've done is, when I ran for Congress in Warren County and knocked on people's doors as a Republican, I said these words. I'm running for Congress. My name is Samuel Ronan. I'm running in the Republican primary. I believe in universal health care. I believe in universal education. What are your thoughts on, what are your main issues? And they're like, you know what, that's actually pretty interesting. Tell me more about the universal health care. And then as I talked about it, I thought, oh, wow, yeah, I guess I am spending too much money out of premiums for my insurance and I'm not getting any benefit. It's like, correct. What we're trying to do is turn the federal government into a piggy bank with intelligent people steering the ship so that the piggy bank gets spent accordingly, so that all you have to do is show up to a hospital and then they charge the federal government. They get paid, you get treated, you go out the door, nothing out of the pocket. And they're like, that makes way too much sense. I'm like, precisely. So in all actuality, populism is the answer to that. How challenging would that be? It would be challenging as hard or as easy as it is for you to talk about populism without getting angry and without becoming overly polarized. As long as you present your ideas in a way that is populist, as in, hey, so I'm a Republican and I believe that, we already have private insurance, which we all pay into this big slush fund so that when something happens, there's a big pool of money to draw from. I think that's a waste having a middleman, which, has to have an infrastructure, employees, a billionaire CEO to buy his fifth yacht, this, that, and the other, when we already have this with Medicare. And I think if we just took that out, we could save $3.5 trillion and then rebuild I-70. And they're like, you know what? You had me at rebuild I-70. So it's about how you approach it. But populism is a universally supported political theme, I guess. People don't want to work more for less. People want to be respected and valued. People want to have a viable living condition. People don't want to go to the doctor's office and be, bankrupt. People want to get an education, whether it's in a trade or in a degree. People want these things. They just don't necessarily agree on the same path to get there. Well, that's socialist. It's like, okay, but that's how the military does things. They're like, well, I support the troops. And it's like, okay, then why don't you support universal health care and universal education for other people? Well, because then I'm paying for it and somebody's going to just waste their time. It's like, well, are you saying that the military is just full of paragons? Well, no. Okay. How does health insurance work right now? Well, I pay for it every month, and if I ever need it or somebody else needs it, they use it. It's like big brain. So it's really a matter of communication and really being able to convey a point without necessarily being confrontational, which at scale, significantly easier than it is one-on-one.
I understand. And to your point, and to Parker's point, I'm going to bring Parker. I'm going to actually answer this question, if you don't mind.
This is your show.
The Republicans use socialism as a scare tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wish I was running for Congress, because the first thing I would say is, hey, who pays for your health care, Congressperson or Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham? Who actually pays for your health care? Oh, that's right, I do. The American taxpayer. What type of care do you get? Oh, the best health care, you say. Because just because you have health insurance does not mean that your care is great.
No.
And
it's limited.
It's
or
very
you'll be charged
limited.
Extra.
You
get the care.
If you go out of network, you're going to pay more. You're just going to pay more. So they can mess with me. They do that to scare. They use the word socialism to scare people, and it's like one of the most frustrating things that people can't see through that. But I said, nope, I'm answering this question. I'm sorry. I'm answering.
I'd like to piggyback on the whole socialism scare tactic. It's something interesting to navigate around. Because if you talk about social issues, to include, fiscal social issues like universal health care and education, as long as you don't use the buzzwords, in most cases, like I still do, like I'm not going to hide away from it because it is becoming more popular in general. But before, I would say, yeah, I want American healthcare, just America first healthcare. And like, oh, tell me more about that. And then I explained universal healthcare. Like, dude, that sounds awesome. And then I said the same thing for education, even housing, like a universal housing allowance, universal pay. And they're like, dude, that is freaking the bee's knees. You got my vote. And it's socialism. Of course, I want their vote. So I'm not going to turn around and say, well, you said you didn't like socialism, but clearly you do. It's how you talk to people, and it's how you message it. I would really like to answer Max, although macaroon granola.
Oh, you mean this one?
Yeah.
So you stated that global warming crisis could be mitigated by planting trees. Then what about the idea of engineering giant-sized biodomes in undersea environments such as the man-made dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico to grow trees that are salt tolerant, such as mangrove trees? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. No.
So mangrove trees, I believe, and this is solely from my experience playing Age of Empires, but I believe that mangrove trees are native to Africa. Not I don't know where in Africa. I think like the center part of Africa, like
As
big
long as
old
you don't
continent.
believe it's one country and not
Yeah,
several,
no,
we're
it's the
we're fine.
continent. I
Yeah,
just
I'm
I'm
like,
trying to
we.
um I forget where because again, my experience is only from the game. But it was I think it was like where the state of Ghana was. Either which way, the mangrove trees are very interesting because their roots like actually go above ground to a degree, and then it builds the trunk and then raises it up, so you can actually navigate in between all those trees in the real world, and it does something with the nutrients, and there's a reason why it does all that. My only concern with doing mangrove trees for the sake of that argument is I don't know if they would be able to survive in our climate and in our environment, or B, if they would be an invasive species. If they're an invasive species and they're still producing, carbon absorbing, leaves that emit oxygen, hey, it's not the same thing as like the red algae, which, mutilates, cubic miles worth of fish and life. So to that end, building the biodomes, I'd say we're getting more on track at that point. But with our current industry, we don't have solar based or clean energy based industries. So while we are building a clean energy initiative using, fossil fuels to do it, what's the payoff? It would be also a good, interesting point to see how long does it take for a mangrove tree to mature? Because, for instance, hemp fields, I think, would actually be the thing to plant. Because hemp, or bamboo for that matter, grows ridiculously quick. It does. I mean, that's why we call it weed, because it grows like a weed. And if we could cultivate that, the fact that it also provides and restores nutrients into the soil, I think we could then take the desert areas in our country and actually slowly terraform or bioform them into arable land. At which point it will again improve the climate cycle by actually having a water cycle that is consistent. Again, I'm not an environmental scientist, but I believe that is the science behind it. With the biodomes, I don't know. I think at that point, actually, it would just be trying to encourage more algae growth, not algae growth, seaweed, or the good algae that aren't, destroying other life and environments. But that becomes the problem when we start playing God. We don't even know how to play humanity, let alone how to deal with nature and the extreme intricacies of the biome that we have here. It is extremely complex and interconnected, but that is a little bit more feasible than flooding the Grand Canyon. I'll give you that.
Okay, Parker has a question, and he's actually touched on my next question. Imagine Trump or DeSantis on the debate stage having to answer a question about mangrove trees. And the reason I say, oh, this is the next issue, and first of all, I didn't know this was going to turn to Tracy gets educated about the Environment Day, but thank you, Mac, for that. No environmental questions up. So thank you for bringing those up, and keep posting your questions, please. But I want to talk about the debates, and I want to talk about. I'm going to take this path, and I hope you follow me. If you don't, just say, Tracy, what are you talking about? So the Republicans, unlike the Democrats, are actually holding a presidential debate. They're actually holding primaries,
Mm-hmm.
which means Republican voters are going to have a choice of who they want their presidential candidate to be.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats have decided, no, we're just going to tell you who you support, and you support this person. If you don't like it, that's your problem. But there's a wrinkle in this, is that Trump himself doesn't want to debate. And I can see why. He has, what, 18, 19 charges or whatever they are. I mean, there's a ton of them. I had said, this isn't going to be interesting without Trump in the mix, because basically you see him on TV, you have to watch him, right? What do you say to people like me that think that?
I mean, it's true. And unfortunately, the threshold to get onto the debate is also ridiculous. In context, it isn't. 40,000 individual donors and 1 to 3% polling is pretty fair. It's pretty tame in the grand scheme of things. But the amount of capital required to raise that, or the amount of social capital you have to have in order to achieve those numbers, is pretty substantial. So a person like me or like you running for president, whether it's Republican or otherwise, we're going to have a much harder time achieving that because we just can't afford the advertisement. We don't have the name recognition or the face recognition. But to hold a debate is why I'm running as a Republican, because they are. Trump not wanting to debate is his pettiness, his behavior, and proof and evidence that he shouldn't be nowhere near power or the office, and that if anybody with sense would actually get into office, they would immediately throw him into prison and do everything they could to expunge his presidency. But that means it's going to be the DeSantis show if he hasn't dropped out by then, which means people are going to see more and hear more about him for the first time ever. And then everybody else who's on that list, who is usually considered, a non-starter, or they're just, a vanity project, all of a sudden they get that viability because now they got in front of millions of people and they got their 5-second, 5-minute, 30-second soundbite. The reason why I did so well in the DNC chair race, although I didn't get any votes by the party themselves, but I did get national recognition, was because I got the 5 minutes. I got to go on that stage. I got to open my mouth and say things. And people were like, wow, this guy's spitting. And so I was able to gain that support. So the primaries are evidence, too, that we should have public and open elections. That if we truly want citizen representation, then we need to have citizens able to be represented and to convey themselves. And the worst part is you do get federal support once you've actually managed to reach $20 million. The government will give you $20 million and tell you how to spend it. And it just shows how much of a rich people's game it is, because I'm not complaining. I mean, I have a plan. I'm not going to get on this debate stage, unfortunately. But my plan, once I start getting checks in the mail from this job I just started, which is why I'm couch surfing, is to start advertising in the early primary states, build my presence there, build my reputation there, build, just the notoriety there, and build that 1 to 3% outwards this way. Actually focus on the states that are going to be determining the next presidential primary pathway. Because what happens in Iowa and New Hampshire typically dictates the course of the national campaign. So I want to get my foot in the door there. That's the plan. That's the strategy. And it also shows a willingness to be like, hey, guess what? I actually care about your issues, rather than, oh, yeah, I guess that the primary election's coming up. I better spend $1 million in, Iowa before I forget, And once people start realizing that there's real populism in the field, not fake populism, not, populism, but it will bow to corporatism because it got threatened. Once they see that there's somebody on that stage or in the race that will lay down their life, that will stand their ground, that will not bend, that will not break, people start to resonate with that, because people have been begging and pleading and crying out for, hey, who's going to fix this? Who's going to save us? And then, somebody steps up and goes, what are you going to do? Well, show them what you can do. And a debate is one of the best ways to do that. So the TLDR version of all that is, I agree with you that Trump is going to not do it based off his own ego and vanity. The others are going to get artificially elevated because they actually showed up. And we're going to see an interesting political shift because of it. The caveat is elections shouldn't be limited to what a media network dictates. It should be an equal standing for all citizens to get a hold of. There should be minimum standards, but everybody should be able to meet those realistic standards.
Exactly. And you just said the government gives you $20 million if you can raise $20 million.
Correct.
Well, why not say, hey, raise $500, or hey, raise $75?
Why is it about money in the first place?
And exactly, yeah. If you're going to make it about money,
yeah,
because that's what the government's going to do.
To get on the ballot for Congress, if you run as a Republican, it's 50 signatures. But if you run as an independent, it's 5,000 signatures in Ohio. Where's the fairness in that? It should be reversed. It should be 5,000 signatures if you're in a party and 50 if you're not. And then you can have your recognition. And instead of needing to raise $100,000 to buy ads and sell things and this, that, and the other, there should be a monthly, news network, all hands on deck with the candidates who manage to meet the minimums, and you get your 5 minutes, period, dot, end of story. Because even when I was running for the DNC chair, it was the Tom Perez and Keith Ellison show. They were getting asked every single question every single time. And I even said, like, hey, are you going to ask anybody else a question up here? Because I'm getting a little sleepy and I haven't had my coffee yet. So, and it got a chuckle out of the audience. But that's the thing, too. Even with this debate, would I even get asked more than 1 or 2 questions? It's so insidious. Our government and our electoral process is so manipulated and insidious. It's ghastly. But people are also like, well, I don't want to support that, but I can't support you because you have no chance of winning. And it's the same argument they use against Green and libertarians or other independent candidates. And it's like, well, you got to break an egg to make an omelet, folks. So you can either, complain or you can do something about it. And usually that ends the conversation pretty quickly because it's a one-on-one conversation. But when you approach it on a broader spectrum, it's like, hey, I know what this looks like. I know what it's like to be in your shoes because I am in your shoes currently. I am just an American like you. I work for a living. I pay my bills. I'm up to debt in my eyeballs. My savings does this worse than the crypto market. But that's exactly why I'm running for office. That's exactly why I want to represent you and our collective needs. And that's, again, that messaging has become very resonant and has gotten a lot of positive feedback and support for this campaign.
So, well, I'll ask you this off. No, I won't ask you off air. I'll ask you on air, but I'll make it the last question that I ask. So the next one, I don't know how to spawn this or to approach this topic because I'm hoping that you have the correct answer. But if you don't, you may see another side of me. Another issue that I greatly support is reparations for people of African descent. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the reparations?
So I have 2 answers to that. The first answer might rub you the wrong way. The second one might not. My first answer to that is I have a plan and an idea and a policy, but it's not my place to say. I am a white American who was born in Germany. This is a African descent issue. This is a Black issue. So I think it's Black people's responsibility to come up with a solution that they collectively can agree to. Because my policy that is on the website is you will get from this generation forward or from this generation back. If you are Black and you are alive now up until December 31st at midnight of this year, you will never pay taxes. You will never pay interest. You will always be approved for your loans. And you will have, I believe it was priority placement for university jobs after university and accessibility to housing, and to include not paying interest on vehicles and such like that. And, this could go even further. Like we could throw it into you get free solar panels on your house. You have first dibs on the housing market. You have first dibs on brand new cars, and you only have to pay, half price. Like there's so many different things that could be done. And then we look at the indigenous populations, Native Americans. We've done even worse to some degree. We committed genocide against them. We enslaved Black people, and we committed genocide against Native Americans. There needs to be reparations there
but
too, to some degree.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying, like, to your point, I can say all
that.
sorts of things that I would envision would be beneficial to the Black community to establish generational wealth. That is what I would do. I would propose policies and provisions that would help establish generational wealth, but there would have to be a cutoff. Say, for instance, even this generation, anyone who was alive right now in Black and plus 50 years, which at that point, then it's like, well, what about in 50 years when, my grandchild has, their daughter and they're born and now they don't get the benefit. There's the argument, right? And if we're talking about a one-time check, well, then again, the generation to come will never see that check. So I think reparations has to be something more than money and more than a benefit. It has to be something that can be long term, that could do something to us to get the Black community, and the only way to phrase it is like this, on the same level as white America, because white America is light years ahead of Black America, of Asian America, Hispanic America, Middle Eastern America, because that's the culture. It is a white supremacist country, and we dominate. And in order to fix that, it's not enough to just give you a one-time check of what, $1,200 or something. No, because that's every time the debate comes up, it's like, oh yeah, we'll just divvy out $1 trillion or like $1 billion to the Black community. It's like, oh really? 20% of the population is going to split even $20 billion. Like that's ridiculous. So
Yeah. And not to cut you off, but I was specific in that question because obviously the entire Republican Party is. You bring up reparations, you're going to get an answer. I'll give a Mitch McConnell answer. You got a Black president, that's enough. That's basically what his answer
true.
was.
That is exactly what the Republicans.
I mean, his answer was literally like, "Well, you got a Black president." No, that's not the same thing. I agree with you that there needs to be a long-term solution, but personally, I believe there needs to be a check, especially because you have a lot of older Black Americans that have suffered through Jim Crow, that have suffered through mass incarceration. I perfectly agree with you. There should be a, solar panel on all the answers that you gave, but I was specific in talking about people of African descent because our country doesn't want to talk about it. America gave reparations to Japanese Americans, as they should have. They absolutely should have. You put them in concentration camps. You need to pay for that. America even gave reparations to Holocaust survivors, and that didn't even happen in the United States. That happened in Germany. When it comes to Black people, and this is going to get to a question. When it comes to Black people, the whole, especially on the Republican side, it's like it's your own fault that you're where you are right now, forgetting that no, you put me in this condition, and now you don't want to take responsibility when I'm bringing up, hey, you should do this, or hey, you should do this. And trust me, I got a billion quadrillion problems with the Democrats. One, because I think they take the Black vote for granted. Second, they infer or outright say we owe them, like they own our votes, which they do that and they know they do it. But I guess as a Black American, I get so frustrated because I have one party, I have basically two parties that ignore everything that I would even want. And it's like, okay, which one? And so I've just decided, you know what, I'll just go over here to this third way, and at least I'm fine there because this other way isn't making sense to me.
Well, and that's another reason why I'm running, right? Because I am the third way. I am the independent candidate. I am the third party. I just happen to have an R on my name. You can still support me regardless of your traditional political leanings because I am fighting for a true populist, campaign and candidacy, and of course administration. So, and I'm glad you said the things because again, it's not that I'm not thinking about, Jim Crow and, surviving the civil rights abuses and this, that, and the other. It's I don't have the lived experience. I don't have the anecdotal experience. So for me, I think the way to build generational wealth is to have debt or no debt, right? To eliminate debt in any capacity so that the generation that is debt free can establish wealth, establish savings, establish an estate, and then pass it on to their children and their next generations, which is what's happening. I mean, my grandmother has passed, and she passed that money on to her children, which happens to be my father. And now he's able to invest in his home, his savings, his life, and then eventually we kids will inherit that. And whether we decide to sell everything and take a check, whether we decide to keep it and raise one of our families in there, whatever, that's generational wealth building. And in the vast majority of cases, Black America does not have that opportunity. And the very few exceptions to that rule still ends up getting treated disproportionately due to credit, due to redlining, due to all of the other systemic racism that exists in our country. So for me, what could I do that is long term? A check is not long term. And if I gave you a not substantial enough check, then I'm an asshole anyway. And I know you said don't swear. I'm sorry. That I'm a jerk anyway. Because if the Republicans were to even consider a reparation check, it would probably be something like what the COVID check was, $1,200, and that's it, one and done. And that's a slap in the face. That
and then they say we did our part. We gave you $1,200.
And then they will stand on that. It's like, what more do you want? We gave you $1,200, right? And then they'll be like, all right, and then they'll just go straight back to saying the N-word. And that's why reparations, like even the thought of, say, partitioning an area of the country and turning it into a predominantly Black state, like literally, the only people who can get elected there, the only people who can do things are Black and Black community, Black culture, this, that, and the other. But you'll have 2 senators and at least 1 congressman in Congress for the rest of this country's existence. See, that also isn't good enough because the Black population is 20%. So it's like, what permanent, ethical, moral solution that also helps financially could there be in place? That's the discussion I would love to have. I would love to have that conversation with Cornel West, you and Nina Turner, and I mean, who are some other Black?
The fact that you just put me in the same category as Cornel West, you do not know how I appreciate that, because I'm like, you don't want me in any substantive type of discussion. No, you don't. No, you don't.
All I'm saying is that's a conversation that I think should be had rather than the white man dictate to you, the Black community, this is what I think you should get, and this is what you're going to get, and you better like it because this is the only time it's going to happen. I think that's foolish.
Right.
And I think that's also Eric.
Right. And that's why I bring up reparations, because one, I mean, you have people, want it, and I don't want to sound like I'm racist. I don't mean to, but when other cultures attach themselves to the discussion, I don't think that's appropriate, because no other culture or no other race has had the experience that Black Americans have had, even within the 20th century. So I'm always cautious when I hear, well, like I said, the entire Republican Party, they're just like, basically, again, they're giving the Mitch McConnell answer. It's like, well, be satisfied with that. And the Democrats, they want the Bernie Sanders solution of, we'll just have a study committee. I don't need a study committee to know that my mother could, like, I'm the first generation to have full voting rights. She didn't have them. Her grandmother didn't have them. Her grandmother didn't have them. I'm the first one that has them. And I was born, well, I'm not going to tell when I was born.
You were born in 1993. Just in your mid-30s.
If you believe that, you believe that Trump is a good and decent moral person.
Hey, I was just trying to be,
I know you could have said 2000. No, that's pushing it. That's just a lot. That's pushing.
You genuinely, unless you're going for the rogue look, it's like, oh, it could be hair dye.
No, this is natural.
There you go, natural rogue. Let's go.
But I that's why I bring up that issue, because it frustrates me to end all how both parties, they want to play these games with Black Americans, and I'm always pushing, hey, Black people, the person necessarily have to be Black. But listen to what they're saying, and I think a lot of things that you're saying are very, very important. And I told you I was going to keep you 45 minutes. We are so far beyond that, but I got 2 more questions. I got two more.
I'll hold 2 more.
And if you say something else, then we can keep going. Because I'm certain that you have things to do with your day, and you don't want to just sit here and talk to the Black girl with gray hair all day. But
after we just talked about reparations.
I know, but yeah, I know. I always like to do this. I always like to have people I was asked this question: running this specific campaign, what have you learned about yourself that you did not know before you ran for president?
Hmm. I would say what I'm learning about myself is that I don't have the same circle that other candidates usually do when they're running for office. And when I mean it's not just friends and family, because obviously I have friends and family, but there's usually a Doug Stamper. And I know I'm quoting House of Cards here, but there's usually a Doug Stamper and a couple of other folk that surround you, that help you and help elevate you. And I have found out that although I am finding some very talented people, it's going to take a minute for them to become my Doug Stamper, because we got to learn about each other. We got to have our growing pains. And I think that as much as I would love to win this election, and I am going to put forth the effort to do so, the reality is, unless one of these things goes extremely viral, or my advertising in New Hampshire and Iowa goes exceptionally well, it's not going to happen. So I am hoping that what this does is provide an audition, a resume to future voters and future, people that might want to work on the campaign for my 2028 run. And I'm hoping that, either I continue to have well-paying jobs and I continue to invest that money into that future so that I can afford to pay these people full time and afford to, do the things that are unfortunately necessary, flying and, building up my hotel points so I can actually go to all the states and whatnot. I'm learning that you got to have that core element, and I'm building it, and I look forward to the work that we do.
Second question. I said I had two, but I may have three. Okay, so this channel, here's an announcement. Now we've dropped viewers, but they'll see it later on. So, myself and another person, we are working on a presidential debate. And I think that you would be a fantastic person, even though we want to do it more third party. But I don't think you're against third party because you're leaning a lot
I'm
towards third
basically
party
a third party candidate in general.
in
I'm just
general.
choosing to
Yeah.
run under one of the major
Yeah,
parties.
so I would, privately, I would love to get with you on terms of that because um, we're hoping it'll be sometime before the end of this year and
Sure.
coordinate that between all the candidates. So we're going to go to, and I said I had to, but this will be, I'm going to ask you just give a quick yes or no kind of question because this is going to be time to wrap this up. But Mac wants to know: do you favor changing the rules of federal aviation sector to modernize the system in public or private air transport to prevent the ever increasing number of plane crashes that have been happening recently in the country? I didn't know plane crashes were happening in the country.
Oh, it's getting worse because there is, again, no accountability nor responsibility at the corporate level for doing these things. But you said it was a yes or no answer, so I'll stop being a politician and simply say yes.
Okay.
I am very much so in favor.
And the reason I say yes or no, because we're almost at an hour and 30. This is the longest interview I've ever done. And I'm still like, well, I want to ask this, I want to ask this, I want to ask this, but I
Well,
will not.
hopefully that's a good sign, though, because
Yes,
if
it is.
you were sick and tired of talking to me, you would have been like, all right, it's been 30 minutes. If it's probably a
I've
good
never
sign that
gone
you want to
under
ask me
30
more
minutes.
questions.
I have never gone under 30 minutes. And I always tell people who I have tried to interview, I'm going to keep this 45 minutes. And I don't. But I've never kept it 1 hour, 22 minutes either. I'm like, Tracy, what was you talking about?
Now, I
So,
do have a hard stop here soon. I have to go back to Ohio to pick up the rest of my stuff. But
no, we're not going to, we definitely are going to end this because I have to pick up my medication. So I do have a stop. Not that I haven't enjoyed this conversation. So if you are watching this, remember, I think this interview was supposed to be scheduled for Tuesday. I put it on my calendar, it was going to be Tuesday. But instead of that, I'm going to be solo and I'm going to talk about should the squad be primary. And I'm telling you now, you're not going to like what I have to say. I'm
The
not a
answer is
fan,
yes.
but I'm going to take a different spin on it. But that's ultimately, I mean, I know everybody who watches my channel knows what my answer is going to be, but I'm going to tell you the why. Um, in terms of that, and then the Tracy show, the show that you would have normally been on if you were running as an independent, that moves to Thursdays. That moves to Thursdays um, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So remember, when you see me Tuesday, that'll be the second to last show that I do on Tuesday. We're going to switch to Thursdays um, because we're going to switch to Thursdays, which means I'm making another announcement. That means the Thursday after party is coming back. The Thursday after party is going to come back, and that's going to be open to not only the candidate that I invite on that show, but it'll be open to anybody that supports me on buymeacoffee.com/TRACYMedia. $2 a month will get you into that discussion. It's gonna be, but we'll just straight up answer just questions that candidate can have, and if they can't come, we'll do something completely silly. So remember, in September, the Tracy Show will come on at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then after that, we'll have the after party. So, I see some comments here, and then we'll wrap it up. But I don't live in her district. Oh, wait a minute. I should primary AOC, LOL. But I don't live in her primary. I'm in Jamal Bowman's, but he's part of the squad, so same answer. Primary whoever you can. But you got to watch my show Tuesday to see. I'm building this show up on Tuesday because I'm just am. So, last question to you is, tell people how they can connect to your campaign.
Absolutely. So I have several different socials. They can all be found on www.samronan.com. I don't like being vapid and putting my name out there as my own industry, if you will. But I'm running for office, and that's really the only way you're ever going to find out who I am, right? And from there, you'll find me on Facebook. I'm no longer on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And in fact, I posted a few comments in this live chat with my campaign account. So you have my lovely, it was this way. And that's how you can reach out to me. We are always looking for volunteers. There's always work to be done. And we only request that you commit to whatever time you can commit. If that's an hour a day, great. If it's an hour a week, that's great. As long as you can commit to it and be consistent, we're happy. The other things, of course, are donations. We have swag t-shirts, although I'm not wearing one. I think it's in a box, unfortunately. But we have Ronan for president, the logo, and on the back is a QR code. So when you're walking down the street wearing the swag gear, people can QR code the back of the t-shirt and get put to, I believe, the YouTube channel. So there are quite a few different ways to support. Donations are always welcome. We do PayPal. We do Red Wins, I guess, is the Republican version of Act Blue. And, of course, buying swag gear. So www.samronan.com. And most of the social handles are Ronan, the number 4, or the word FOR, president. If you type that in anywhere, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you'll find this guy. So,
are you on YouTube?
Yes, right. You had it up there. One of my comments. And that is also Ronan FOR president.
I don't see it. I literally don't see it. And I could be
100%
right past
it.
You probably did, and I'm just not seeing it. But what I will do is I will link it back when I go in and do my editing. But no, I actually don't see, because all I'm seeing is people's comments. It may be in the very, very top.
So this is the link. Whoa, whoops! It's on autoplay. I apologize for that. That's the link.
Ah, there
Anywho,
it is. There it
all
is.
that to
Okay.
say, it's been a pleasure. I know you got to go, and I need to start packing for my trip back home as well. But it has been a delight. It's been a pleasure. I definitely look forward to that presidential debate. Even if it's like a simulcast against the Republican debate, that would be something very entertaining to do
Ah,
as well.
yeah. I do have a special that I'm doing August the 23rd about the presidential RNC debate, but that's going to be on that, you got to be humorous because I plan on laughing the whole time. I just plan on jokes just coming and coming and coming and coming. So, yep. So, oh, I love the after conversation part you guys are having.
So, on that note, Tracy, I
Yes.
will leave you to it. It's been a pleasure. Great meeting you guys all. And hopefully, I have earned your support and your trust, and we can start taking this country back by the horns.
Yep. And again, everybody remember to like this video. Please share this video. It's probably one of the better interviews I've done. Comment, subscribe, share, like. Support me on buymeacoffee.com, Tracy / TRACYMedia LLC. I will see you all Tuesday. Have a fantastic day.